Welcome to Limitless, the podcast where peak performance meets unstoppable growth. Each week, we explore powerful strategies to elevate your mind, body, and relationships, breaking through barriers and unlocking your potential. Whether you're striving for personal excellence or deeper connection, this is your space for transformation. Just a reminder that this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. It is not intended to diagnose, treat, or cure any mental, health, or medical condition, nor is it a substitute for professional advice. Always consult a licensed healthcare or mental health professional for your own needs. If you are experiencing a mental health crisis, text or call 988, and if you need medical attention, dial 911 from your phone. Now let's get started with living a life without limits. All right, welcome to the Limitless Podcast. I'm Rod Price. I'm with my co-host, Kerry McCarter. We've got some special guests today, and I'm going to keep it short and sweet. We have lots of disclaimers at the head of this, so don't worry about that. But we are really excited to have these two guests with us today. We think they epitomize what Kerry and I are trying to build, do, convey, and articulate with the peak performing life and living a life without limits. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Kerry, who's going to really take it over today, and I'll interject my questions, comments, things like that, but I'm really looking forward to this one. Kerry, go ahead.
Okay, great. So, Jim and Eileen, it's such a privilege to be with you both. I have so much respect for you, and just as Rod was saying, really, you do, in my mind, embody a peak performing couple, literally, and metaphor as well. So I just, I'm really grateful for your friendship and for the connection that you have in my life. And I'm just honored to be here with you and looking forward to asking both of you questions today. But would you both be willing to just share a little bit about you and your background? And then we'll go into more questions after that.
I'm Jim Brisbine. I've been hiking and climbing and skiing for 50 years now. I'm coming up on my 50th anniversary.
My hero.
Yes, me too.
And in fact, I met Kerry on a hike about, 25 years ago, I think.
Yes.
Was. So I've been pretty involved in the mountains, the outdoors for the majority of my life. I'm retired now. I was an engineer throughout my career, and now I'm enjoying the retired life.
Oh, that's great. And Jim, what kind of engineer?
Geotechnical engineer. So I was, it's, kind of, it involves a lot of geology, so that kind of fit in naturally.
Great.
My son's a geologist, so yeah, he just finished up his undergrad, but he's been working in the geosciences for 5 years, so I can relate.
Great.
My name's Eileen Brisbine. I've been hiking and climbing as long as I've known Jim. We've been hiking together and climbing together for about 20 years now. Yeah. Before that, I've always loved the outdoors ever since I was a child. I grew up locally in Washington State, and I was a business major. So I actually ended up in accounting and a CFO in accounting. But my whole life, I've just been outside.
Oh, so great. Those are wonderful. And so you're both talking a little bit about how you got interested in the outdoors. Jim, how about you?
I think it started when I was in probably junior high, and I have 4 older brothers, and most of them, were into backpacking. So I grew up with the REI catalog on the living room coffee table.
Oh,
2 issues a year. And even before I set foot in the mountains, I would flip through these catalogs at night and I had my backpack, my boots, my tent, my clothing, everything was just all picked out from these catalogs. So that's what got me interested initially.
And my story is kind of different because I was raised with everybody always outside. I was raised in Indian on a small little 20 acres. And we was always outside. But it was outside sports, it was outside activities, outside work, all that stuff. And then when I was in my early 20s, I had somebody take me backpacking for the first time. And it poured down rain, and we got into bees, and we got lost, and we got in the mud, and I was just so hooked afterwards.
Perfect.
This is for me.
Oh, it's such a good story. And Eileen, I've also heard you talk about love of exploring. Is that?
Yes. I mean, I think that was one thing that Jim and I used to always laugh about, is that we believe we have what's called the explorer gene, and that whole concept of exploring and being in the unknown. And, I think it fits into our entire life, both the outdoors and how we worked and all that other stuff. It definitely is part of our lives.
Yeah, that's so neat. It's so awesome. And okay, can you tell us a little bit about how you met?
We had a couple mutual friends who connected us for a backcountry ski tour, and
Which lasted 12 hours.
Wow.
First day we met each other.
Your first date?
yeah, first day was a backcountry ski tour. We finished by headlamp. And she got in trouble for coming home too late. But I think I realized that, well, this woman has a high bar for unpleasantness, and she loves to explore. So I thought, I don't know how this will develop, but I'm sure interested in doing more with her.
Oh,
I think we felt from the very beginning that if nothing else, we'd be friends.
Yeah.
We loved the same things so much.
Yeah.
oh.
Have
Well,
you kept? Sorry, I just had a question. Have you kept track then of the number of adventures you've been on together since then? Do you know the number to this day?
I don't have the number in my head, but I keep a log.
Yeah.
I have a journal and a logbook that goes back to 1975,
Wow.
where I've documented every hike, climb, ski tour, rafting trip, everything I've ever done. So I could easily go back and figure out how many Eileen and I have done together. But I would guess it's got to be around 400.
Wow. That's amazing.
We had when we first retired, because we retired young, because we could still carry packs, and we have a lot of climbing goals we wanted, so we retired together so we could do stuff. I think it was the second year that one of our friends asked us how many nights we had spent in a tent that year. I think you came up with,
It was 50, but the year wasn't quite over yet.
it was
so
over and we were at 50.
So I think, it was probably going to end up being about 55 or 60 nights in a tent.
And we don't snow camp. So
Oh.
no, we don't snow camp. We'll in the spring we'll sleep on snow, but winter camp, we don't winter camp.
Yeah.
It's too dark.
It's too dark.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's that like? That just that you've been in the camp. Okay, so you've been in the tent 50 times to get, well, many more than that. But what's that like for you guys? Just having those memories. I mean, it's so special. Really.
Yeah, it is. Tent life is its own
Yeah.
its own special flavor of living. But we both like it. There's unpleasantries. Sometimes it's cold and uncomfortable and wet, but we always seem to find the positive. We've had a few. We've had a couple memorable nights in storms, blizzards, where we've had our tent damaged. Those really stand out.
Do you have one in particular, or do you want to share?
Well, the wildest night we've ever had was up at Ice Lakes in the Anaap Mountains. And this, what I call the Moab, the mother of all blizzards.
That's great.
The wind gusts were up to 80 miles an hour. It just kept hammering us all night long, from sundown to sunup, just like a freight train coming through this basin, just repeatedly. It filled our tent with spindrift.
Because we have mesh.
Yeah, the sides of our tent were mosquito netting. So this fine snow would go in the tent, but it couldn't go back out. So we had 4 inches of snow inside our tent. I spent a lot of the night lying on my back with my both feet up in the air, holding the walls of the tent to keep this whole thing from collapsing. And by morning, we had broken, a couple of the poles were broken and the fabric was torn, and we were cold and wet and miserable
And zero sleep.
And loved it.
It was a great memory.
We wouldn't, I mean, we wouldn't want to go through it again, but it was just one of those experiences where we're so fortunate to have gone through that and survived it.
And you're up all night.
Yeah.
And
you get no sleep.
No sleep. So it's all about having a sense of humor.
Oh, that helps.
Well, that's the only
The
thing.
only thing that helps.
That's really the only thing that gets you through.
How do you guys do that? Do you just...
I don't know. For me, I just think it's so miserable. The only thing you can do is laugh.
And for me, in our relationship, I'm the optimist and he's the realist.
Oh,
so
right.
For me, I can always look at it going, this is fun, or this is crazy, or this is whatever. I mean, I'm just totally optimistic. Oh, the pictures are going to be great in the morning, that sort of thing. So
I like that.
Yeah. You always got to look for the pluses. Yeah. They're out there.
Yeah. Oh, that's really neat. Okay, so how has climbing together impacted your relationship? How do you support each other? You're already answering this, but anything else you'd like to say?
I think because I had never climbed before, so climbing was new to me. I'd backpacked, but I'd never climbed. So it really impacts your relationship, because in the beginning, when we first started climbing together, I had to rely on Jim for everything. So he would tell me at different spot times, you're staying there, I got to go get the rope, or you can't do this, or I need to leave you at home because otherwise I'll worry about me and not you. And then as I progressed, we kind of got where he started to respect my opinion, or I started asking questions. So at that point, we had a lot of arguments. We don't believe in, when you're climbing, it's very important to handle problems right away so you never have them again. I mean, it's really important because it is you can die.
Yes.
So we had to learn to communicate very well, because it was just all about being able to say, this is what happened. How come it happened? How do we fix it? How do we never do this again? And we also had to come up with rules that, as I got better at the sport, we had to come up with rules where I could question Jim and he couldn't yell at me. If you,
was a good rule.
Yeah.
It's all about safety. So if I question him or he questions me, that's totally okay.
Yeah, you can't take it personally. You just have to look at it as now we're a team, and we have to be working together on these problems. And he might have a better idea than I do about a certain situation.
Not very often.
That's a good rule, though, for climbing partnerships in general. Yeah.
Yeah, because you can question. So you can say,
Yeah.
are you sure you tied a knot in the end of the rope? Or
Right.
Let me check you.
Am I safe?
Yeah. Am I safe? Or, aren't you, like there was one time I asked Jim, I said, don't you want to put, with the rappel he was going to do, I said, don't you want to put an auto block on that? And we were in a hurry. And he said, I'll put one on.
Yeah.
He put one on, and at the bottom of the rappel, he goes, oh, I'm so glad I had an auto block.
Good call. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I think that I just sitting here, I think that really goes into how we drive. Because that rule, once we started establishing that rule, we also made that rule for driving in the car.
Wow.
So, as long as I don't scream, you know, then it's always okay to say, do you see that person on the crosswalk? Do you see that car? Do you see the car ahead? That's just, we never get mad at each other for stuff like that, because again, it's very critical situation.
How does that play into, you sort of answered the question a little bit. How does that play into your everyday life, not just in the car, but on a daily basis, how you operate? So the way, the rules and boundaries that you developed on the mountain or climbing, how does that impact your everyday life as a couple?
The one that popped into my head is that unless it is a life and death, unless it is critical, it just, there's two different ways to put up a tent. There's different ways to cook. There's different ways to go get water, and we each have our strengths and whatever. So we don't fold laundry the same. We don't do laundry the same. We don't load the dishwasher the same. We don't do dishes the same. But if one of us does it, then by definition, it's right. And, because it's just not that important.
Yeah.
And so we focus more on the things that are going to hurt somebody.
Yeah. I think your question is really good, Rod. I hadn't even thought about it that way, but it's true that, in a climbing situation, we're not allowed to get upset if the other person questions us.
Mm-hmm.
In everyday life, we try not to question each other.
Good call. Yeah, good advice.
Will it help our climbing if Eileen says, did you tie that knot correctly? You better check that. Yes, that will help. It will not help our relationship if Eileen says, why did you make the bed that way?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's such a good point.
Good advice.
So
good advice.
Powerful.
You need to know which side of the line you're on at any given time.
That is so powerful. And, like from a nursing standpoint, it's a little similar just around the safety check. Nurses check each other all the time in the hospital, right? With medications.
Oh, yeah,
it's a
absolutely.
safety thing, similar to like climbing, because it helps keep everybody safe.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I really love what you just shared. That is so powerful. Such a great analogy of just where things are really critical and really important, how you come together as a team and problem solve and are really open. And then there's other things that are less, like acceptance of each other.
You have to let some things roll off your back.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm
That's
thinking
really
about the climbing community. I belong to the climbing community in Spokane and have for a number of years. And so I see all age ranges and male, female, everything, and couples and singles. Do you think that your experience as a couple is unique in terms of, as you look at your climbing, mountaineering, trekking community around you, do you think your experience is unique, or do you see a lot of Jim and Eileen's out there in your world?
We don't see a lot of married couples, and I'm not sure why. Maybe it's just that in a marriage, one person's more interested in climbing than the other, and
I have a different reason why I don't think we see people like that is because I always, Jim's friends always said, "Oh my God, you're so lucky you found a climbing wife," right? I didn't climb. I had never scrambled. I'd never done anything like that. And I think the big difference is that Jim wanted a partner. And so Jim's made lots of, because I'm not as fast as him. I'm not as strong as him. I'm not, and from the minute we started doing things together, Jim's always hiked behind me because I'm not as strong as he is. And then he knows exactly where I am, and we can talk and visit and share the experience. And so many couples we see, one of them is clear out in front of the other, and then they're waiting and they're frustrated. For us, it's all a journey. You just, and that's the way Jim saw it, as this was something we were going to do together. And if we were going to do it together, the only way to be together is for him to be behind me.
Yeah.
And so and what's interesting is we have a lot of people when we do our climbs and stuff like that. People want me out front because I am the slowest. I set a pretty good pace because Jim said, you just need an all-day pace. He said, I do not care how fast you hike. You just need to be able to hike all day.
Yeah. And
we have people all the time that are just like, oh, Eileen, why don't you get out front? Because then we can all be in the conversation. So I attribute a lot of it to Jim, why we have this relationship, is because he really did what I say, come back and get me.
Nice.
I wasn't always like that. I mean, I got to admit, when I was younger, it was all about being first, being the first one to the summit.
I get that.
And then as time went on and I had more relationships, I realized it's more fun to summit together.
Can I ask what, without asking ages, I don't want to do that, but what age range were you both in when you started climbing together, when you really started saying, okay, we're going to do this?
In our 40s.
Well, let's see. I was...
we celebrated your 50th birthday together.
Yeah, okay. So I guess I was late 40s, you were early 40s.
Yeah.
So we were, we'd both been through a first marriage, and I think we'd learned a lot. We learned, I'd made a lot of mistakes in the mountains in my first relationship. So I did learn from that. And sometimes you just gotta make mistakes and then, correct them later.
Yeah, growth mindset, right? That's good.
Yeah.
Can you guys share another story, if you're comfortable, of experience while you were climbing that helped strengthen you or pull you together?
Well, I think the most significant thing we've ever been through on a climb is we were on a doing a very hard peak up near the Canadian border, and it was just the two of us. We had friends back in base camp, but it was just the two of us, and we had summited kind of late in the day. It'd been a good climb, scary at times, but we were just starting to rappel down, and Eileen got hit by a rock. So she got hit on the leg to the point where she could not really walk.
Oh, wow.
And we are, it had taken us, I don't know, like 6 hours to get from base camp to get to that point. So we were in a pickle.
Wow.
And it was not a good situation.
We were high on this mountain, on this steep ridge, terribly exposed. And it was just the worst imaginable spot to have an accident, a serious accident like that.
Wow.
And I think we kind of both went through the freak out period.
Sure.
Yeah.
Or just, your brain is just swirling, like you just can't. I don't know what to do. I don't know how we're going to get out of this. This is a horrible situation. She was bleeding profusely, and her knee was swelling up, and we had to get down this very loose, steep technical terrain. And one thing we did, I don't know if it was conscious or not, but we just kind of evolved into, like, I feel like I can't handle all of this. But Eileen took care of her medical needs. I took care of the technical descent.
Sure.
Because she wouldn't have been able to handle both things. So, by dividing and conquering, just I can just focus on the descent. And I know Eileen is taking care of her wounds herself, after we both worked on them. And this was it turned out to be a 9-hour descent. We got back to base camp at 1:30 in the morning. And we were just frazzled. But on the other hand, we just thought, I like to quote that, the line from Apollo 13, where somebody says, "This is the worst thing that's ever happened to us."
Oh.
And I like to think, no, this is our finest hour.
It truly was.
And
it's not.
yeah, as a
Wow.
I really think it was our finest hour. Well, finest 9 hours, I should say.
That's really moving. Oh,
Because the other thing that we did, I mean, like Jim said at the very beginning, he was trying to worry about me and I was trying to think about what the hell we're going to do. And the second we said, okay, and then the other thing we did is we just broke it into little pieces. It was so overwhelming to do that 9 hours. We just looked at each other and we said, we cannot get rescued here.
No,
okay.
So the first thing we have to do is get down to where our gear is, right? And then we get down there and then we're like, okay, we could stay here and so it was constantly this
This little, just kind of chipping away, just a little, one manageable bite at a time.
We would just look at, could we get rescued up there? Yeah, we could get rescued up there.
Yeah.
That's a better spot
That's
to get
better
rescued.
than here. Still not good, but it's better. And then we get there. Okay, there's a better spot there. Can we make it? And we just little by little.
It was pretty amazing.
Such a metaphor for life, too. I mean, in terms of as a couple. So dealing with, what could be your worst hour or 9 hours and seeing it as your finest 9 hours, that's,
Our biggest regret is that when we got down to where we had left stuff down below us, right? And we were like, if nothing else, we have to get down there. That's our number one goal. We got to get down there. And we got down there. And then we had some extra stuff. And so we dumped it on the ground. And together we tried to figure out how to stop the bleeding.
Oh.
Right? And I couldn't reach my feet anymore. So if we changed shoes or put crampons on, Jim had to do that for me.
Wow.
But we had this beautiful thing where I even had a tourniquet on it where I could tighten it if it started bleeding down my leg. And we never got a picture.
oh,
Oh,
yeah, to memorialize that, right?
Probably the last thing you were thinking of.
Right.
Sidebar.
Right. Well,
I was always in charge of bringing the first aid kit on our climbs,
Mm-hmm.
and I left it in camp that day.
oh,
I mean, just the worst possible time to leave it. So we had no first aid supplies.
Mm-mm.
All we had was like extra pair of gloves, a beanie. We had webbing and carabiners and bandana, and that's how we fashioned this big compression wrap on her knee.
Wow.
And we'd get to different spots and we would, together we would figure out the next move. Like I was able to climb up, but I couldn't climb down. I couldn't go up snow, but we constantly talk about, okay, here we are. What are we going to do? And one of us would have an idea and the other one would go, okay, let's do that. That sort of thing. Would it work? Like Jim had to lower me on my butt down scree slopes.
Wow.
wow.
On the rope. And it truly was our finest hour.
Wow.
Both collapsed when we got to camp.
Oh,
Both
I mean,
years.
you're it's so, just to say here, I mean, your problem solving skills are like incredible.
Yeah.
Like I just listening. I mean, I know that because I've been with you guys and it's always stood out to me, just your ability to work together. You as a team, you come together as a couple, you work together. It's like your brilliant minds just come together. It's really impressive. And when I hear you talking about that now, it just really resonates because I've seen it in action, not at that level, but I believe it. And so and then you also, I've heard you talk about not externalizing or blaming. You're pretty committed to that as well, right? Because I that's always stood out to me as I've heard you talk as a couple. It's very impressive.
I believe, that anything we would ever do that Jim's not taking me there for any other reason than because I want to go. And so it's very early on. Actually, we joke about the fact that that's what got me a marriage proposal is one of the worst climbs we ever did. And when we get to the top, I'm just staring.
But not at me.
But not at him.
That's key. That is huge.
Yeah.
That is what makes the difference.
I mean, you and Mike are like that, Kerry. We've heard it. We've seen you and Mike together, and you're the same way. There's no blame. Like, just for example, if all you brought was white bean and kale,
Right.
From
That's
Mike.
great.
I wonder
Not
who that
Mike's-
is.
That's not Mike's favorite food. Did he?
Right.
Did he blame Kerry? No, he worked
No.
on the problem.
No, and the first thing he said was, "I probably should have checked what we were having for."
Right.
You know, yeah,
Totally.
you gotta
Yeah.
look inside first. What was my role in this mistake?
That's right.
More good
Oh.
advice. Great advice. I'm
Oh, my-
learning a lot here. I've been married 38 years, but I'm still learning some new things here. This is awesome. Yeah.
You just ask Mike about white beans and kale, and you
I'm next
Well,
time I'm
exactly
going to
what
do
you're
that.
talking
Yeah.
about.
That's great.
And along that line, my favorite story for that is that we did this climb where it was 4 of us and just a brutal climb. We did it, for anybody that knows, it's Dome Peak, and we did Dome, or we didn't do Dome, we did Sinister and Gunsight. So it's just
Oh,
very, very hard 5-day climb.
Yeah.
And coming out, so I mean, we're just beat up. We are beat up. We're coming out, and we're sitting pretty close to near the end, and we're sitting there, and one of the guys said, "God, you're so lucky your wife will come do these things." And Jim
Yeah.
looked at him and he goes, "She planned it."
Yes, I love it.
This was her idea.
And that's become Jim's whole motto is
Oh,
he just
that's
sort
so
of
great.
plants a seed, I plant it, and then
I can't be blamed for things that go wrong because
yeah. And I mean, when there's things like the first time I wanted to go into the Northern Pickets,
Yeah.
I really wanted to go into the Pickets.
Yeah.
And Jim said, "I don't think that's good for our marriage."
Yeah.
No, he said, "You got to find somebody else to take you." And to this point, we've been in there 10 times. He has not
Oh, wow.
planned one of them. I've planned all of them.
That's great.
Because then
Okay, whose idea was the Wind River Range? Because that's no small feat either.
that was
that was, yeah.
you and a couple other people.
Yeah.
Oh.
I was just again along for the ride.
Yeah.
It became very clear early on that Jim, well, you said you'd always, one of your friends said the Winders was better.
I had heard about it, so I was very eager to go. You see,
See, and I'm one of those people, I'm a pleaser also. So if Jim had to learn early on that he can't tell me, "Wow, I'd really like to go do that."
Oh,
Because the next thing you know, we're booked on a trip to go do that.
that's awesome.
You know, that's just,
Yeah.
Oh, and I'm also hearing, I mean, it's something that really strikes me about you both, Jim and Eileen, is that you share influence really well with each other. It's just, I really admire that. You let each other lead. It's really, I think that's something really beautiful in your relationship that you guys do really well together. And I'm curious, also, like when you think about your professional backgrounds, do you feel like that contributes to your climbing? I'm just curious.
I think they're very similar. It took us a little bit, I mean, you sent us those questions, some of the questions that you might ask, and we had to think about that one for a while.
we talked through it. Yeah.
But what
Yeah.
we've discovered is that we are both really good at putting teams together. We're very good at, both of us are very good at finding people's strengths and knowing that you got to take this person's strength and this person's strength and this person's strength and put it together. And when we're putting together climbs with climbing teams, there's different times where you're like, that person shouldn't come because we're going to be on ropes and we don't like the way they work on ropes, or that person shouldn't come because they're not strong enough. So there's all this where we're both very good in a business world of finding people's strengths and putting teams together. And it's very interesting because Jim, again, just like in the mountains, he's more of a nurturer with teams. And then on my side, I'm very direct. People love working for me in the days that they worked. People always said they loved working with me because they knew where they stood. Because if something went wrong, gonna assess it right there at the situation, and they're gonna, So business-wise, I think that's, and we've been able to accomplish a lot in both of our careers. And I also think there's a big thing with, there's some people that don't like to be challenged in their careers. And Jim and I both, it was never that's an uncomfortable situation. It was always and we had 2 totally different careers, right? But when we talked about it just the other day, That's always been something where if there's a challenge or if there's something that we got to figure out how to do or people haven't done it, that's always been something that we've been excited about. And so it really does, the two do play very well together, that we're not limited at work. We were never limited at work. We never limited ourselves. And near the end of your career, you had a couple jobs you just loved because no one had.
Yeah, they were very challenging, but we also had this great team working on it, and it just made it so satisfying.
You know, if you were going to go look back and give the younger Jim and Eileen and Jim advice, right? If you look back and said, you know, the one piece of advice I would give young Eileen and Jim as a couple starting out, what would that piece of advice be?
Well, to start with, we don't think we would have made a couple if we were 20s.
Good
No,
point.
that's yeah, it's good. We need life experience, right?
Well, I was really headstrong and definitely, I'm a type A personality and it was a strong type A. So, I'm not sure I had enough self-confidence as a human being to follow. And I think that relying on somebody else's expertise and not having to know everything would have been the best thing I would have told myself, is you don't have to be self-reliant.
Wow.
What about you?
Yeah.
Powerful.
I would have a lot of advice to give to a younger Jen, but you know, I think of, like, in terms of the mountains, I would say just don't be so impatient. It's you know, this is a lifetime sport. This is not a one-time only climb or hike. And you know, think about your teammates and really approach it as this is a team sport. If we don't get everybody across the finish line, you haven't really met your goal.
Yeah.
Oh,
Good.
so
Really good.
powerful.
Yeah.
So you guys are so wise and have so much valuable wisdom.
There were too many times I was just, you know, I was selfish and, you know, self-absorbed, and that's not a good way to be.
Good.
Just really, I'm going to take a lot of all these gems that you guys are sharing with me into my life. I really appreciate all your wisdom. And I'm also curious along the lines of that, when you guys, you know, don't make a summit, how do you handle that? Is it along these lines of what you're talking about now?
I think the biggest thing that Jim told me, and we've seen it over and over and over again, is that when we didn't summit, because in the beginning, Jim made sure I summited. We did stuff that he'd done before. So it was like, and it was easier stuff because he wasn't going to take me out on crazy stuff. That didn't start till when I kept wanting to do more and more and more and more. So he didn't push me that way. It was me wanting more.
That's key.
He always told me that if you don't summit the first time, that's just not meant to be. And there's something better about the next summit, you know, the next time you come and summit. And we have this peak in the Pickets that it took me 4 attempts and you 3 attempts. And on our final attempt, when we actually did summit, I mean, we have these beautiful, beautiful day, beautiful experience. And we knew we weren't going to make it back to camp. And so we ended up sleeping on a ridge. And again, that's one of our favorite experiences in our whole climbing life, because we slept on this ridge and the sun came up. And I mean, it was just a spectacular, unbelievable experience. That whole trip was. And so Jim really got that into me, is that if you don't make it, it's just going to be that much better next time. And it's just not right.
Yeah, and furthermore, I've just learned that some difficult climbs, you're just not going to do your first attempt. and sometimes it takes 2 or 3 or 4.
Yep.
So if this climb takes 3 attempts, you might as well start now. You know, it's gonna take 3 times, and every time you learn something about the climb that you apply to your next attempt, and then you take all that, apply it to your next one. You know, whether it's route finding, where to camp, what time of year to go. You know, I was on our Argonaut Peak attempt last summer.
Yes.
We didn't make it. We got
Nope.
close, but we came back with a whole lot of information about what to do better next time.
Yes.
You know, I think that was just a summit that was going to take us a couple of attempts to finish.
Yeah.
And Jim and I only have one where we believe we pushed it too much. I mean, the one where we slept on the ridge, we were fully aware of that. It was a beautiful day. We had a beautiful forecast. And that's happened to us before. We got to end in the, you know, but dealing with the weather and the environment and where you're going to be and talking through it and just like, this is going to be okay. But we only have one where we pushed the summit, and it was just because a freak summer storm came in.
Yeah.
We were high on the mountain in shorts in a freak summer storm.
Dark,
In the dark.
cold and rainy. and just-
Yeah.
Oh,
and
how'd you guys? Yeah, go ahead.
we eventually got back to camp, you know, way after midnight. Even though we summited, we don't have. That's not a summit we're proud of.
Mm-mm.
That's not a satisfying situation to know that we really did some stupid things. We got away with it, but that's not a good long-term strategy for mountaineering. Is to, you know, narrowly get away with something over and over. And we look back at to just think that was really dumb, and we're never going to do that again. You know, no summit is worth
Agreed.
that far.
Yeah.
So like the risk factor just felt
Yeah.
too high,
Yeah.
not worth it. And that
Yeah.
was the kind of the learning or part of that
Yes.
experience.
Exactly. Yeah.
Is understanding that. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
Is
we
that-
were right below the summit. And so it was one of those things where we're like, it's got to be right there.
Yeah.
Right.
And so we're like, it's only, you know, the weather turned and we're standing there and we're like, it's right there.
Yeah.
And so we can be up there and back. And it, you know, and it took over an hour to go up there and back. And by then, you know, it was a blizzard. And I mean, it turned ugly really, really fast on us. But it had turned ugly when we decided to keep going. And that's what I mean by that was just one of the ones we're not proud of.
Yeah.
It was just dumb. And so when we're trying to get back to camp, you know, it's snowing, we're in shorts, we do not have gear. I mean, we both told each other we've got to take this slow because if one of us gets hurt, we got hypothermia coming before we know it.
We wouldn't survive the night. So
Uh,
it was just
stupid.
that was I think our one time when we just pushed it way beyond what we should have, and we talked about that a lot and learned from it, and that's a mistake we'll never make again.
Well, was it the talking about it that really helped? Just kind of debriefing and understanding.
We tend to do a debrief with each other, you know, after anything significant. What did we learn from that? What mistakes did we make? What can we do better next time? How can we avoid this? You know, we really kind of dig in and analyze the situation.
Great.
And I think that's why we're so proud of the time that I got hit by the rock. Because we noodled and talked and figured there was no way we were going to prevent what happened.
Yeah.
And we didn't do anything stupid to cause what happened.
No,
Right.
It
It was just an accident, and accidents happen. And the way we handled it was the best we possibly could have done. So, I mean, we talked about it for a couple months, and we just never, that's why we're so proud of it, is because it was one of those where there's nothing we could have done that was different, and we're very proud of how we handled it.
Sure.
Wow. It's out of your control.
Yeah.
Can we talk about your sites a little bit too? Your websites where you have your stories posted, because I have a big question for you, and if I should know the answer to this, I apologize, because I love your sites. You each have your own site, which I think is really cool. And my other question is going to be, when does the book come out? But but let's talk about your sites. I can share them. I've got both of them pulled up. I've got Eileen's travel and mountain adventures, and I've got the Trail Cat Jim. So which one would you like to talk about first? And I'll share it, and we can kind of go through it a little bit, if that's okay.
I think the one to share first, I think we should share Jim's.
Okay.
Jim's
You bet.
first.
You bet.
Because they definitely have two different, I mean, as you're sharing it, I'll just tell you what happened.
Yeah.
So
there we go.
Since Jim tracks everything that he's done his whole climbing career, and he had slides for everything that were actually organized, that I retired a year before Jim.
Oh.
Jim decided that he wanted to stay an extra year. He was enjoying his job so much. And so it gave me a project. Our daughter kind of had a website, and it kind of gave me a project. So I started loading all the data on, and Jim started working with the slides, and we had a really good time watching everything and looking at everything. But I needed a platform to learn on.
Oh.
So anytime we did something new, we did it on mine.
Oh.
And
Yeah.
so but then people started looking at mine, and people started wanting to see more on mine. So I only post on mine when we do something significant, or if I'm trying to catch everybody up. If people start asking, what have you been doing? Then I'll put together a post on mine.
Yeah.
Jim's is all, he keeps his, I mean, you can go ahead and talk about yours, because as soon as Jim retired, it was something that I helped him with the first year, but then I stepped away from.
This is so well done. As somebody who loves beta, who loves information, I mean, seriously, I wish I would have discovered this a long time ago, because it is so well done. And the information, just the descriptions, everything is, really well done. So I highly recommend everybody who's listening or watching this go to the trailcatgym.com, and we've got a post up here, but for our listeners, go to trailcatgym.com. You will experience some phenomenal detail when it comes to trekking and mountains and the whole thing. So anyway, let me cut you up. It's well done.
Yes, I second that.
So tell us about this. I mean, so when did you actually start this particular site? At what point in your trekking?
Well, it was the year you retired.
2017.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah. And, Eileen did a lot of website work at her previous job. So she brought that in. I didn't know anything about it.
I had done website design, and we knew somebody. So, I had done website design, so I played with that.
Yeah. So I tell people that Eileen's the webmaster. I'm the content manager.
Yeah.
So
Great teamwork.
Yeah, she set up this platform for me. So, this was inspired by all the other websites that I've visited over the years to get information. And I felt like, well, this is a way I can give back to the community. I was fortunate enough to have started a journal, high school, a mountain journal that I kept up. And then, I have photos going back to 1975. So I just thought I'm in kind of a unique position to really create something like this that represents 50 years of mountaineering.
Unbelievable. I just love, as you see here, you've got it's summarized really well in the, I just love this. You can jump to these different sections of it. Because I am a little bit impatient, so I do like to jump to specific things, but just such great detail.
Well, and Jim had been writing trip reports. That's the other thing, that he had written trip reports from 2004, I think, was when he started. So I was able to go back and, copy and paste all these trip reports.
Oh, wow.
And then so I just put all the data in. I would say that's what I did. I put all the data in, and when Jim retired, I helped him do some things, change some formatting, but it's really been a project of love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eileen handed this great platform over to me, and I just took it and ran. And this fills up my retirement days when I'm not in the mountains. So,
Yes.
It's really, I'm feel like, for every day I spend on a mountaineering trip, I'll have about a half a day at home working up the trip report for it.
Yeah.
Why don't you talk about the Major Peak map?
Oh, that's a pet project of mine. The Major Peaks. There's a variety of lists that are floating around. You might have heard of the top 100 or the Bulger list or the top 200 or the.
Sure. I've got all of Becky's books, so
Yes.
Yeah. They've met Becky.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Yes.
Wow.
So
Awesome.
about 20 years ago, 25 years ago, I started thinking about, what are the mountains I'd most want to climb, or, that I regard as the most important mountains of Washington. And all of these other lists were based almost entirely on elevation. But as a geologist, I also knew that elevation is only a small part of this because, there's kind of an overall tilt of the landscape across Washington that, Seattle's at sea level, and, there's towns in Eastern Washington that are 2,000 feet high. So those peaks have an advantage in terms of elevation. So that doesn't really make sense. You really have to dig a little deeper into what makes a major peak. And I used a lot of subjective criteria, such as the visual appeal.
Mm.
Is it a more impressive looking peak?
Yeah.
Steep and glaciated versus kind of broad and rounded. So it took many years to kind of compile this, and it was all based on site observations. Every time I was on a mountain summit, I'd look around and try to identify what looks like the major peaks in this area.
Used to be a test when we were first dating, and it still is to this day, but I get most of them now.
Yeah. But I also, I'd come up with my draft, the draft of the list.
Yeah.
And I was also always looking for confirmation. So, for instance, if I was on a summit with Kerry, I would just, she would no doubt be looking around, and she would say, "What's that great peak over there?" Or "What's that really neat peak over there?" And I'd say, okay, if other people are seeing the same thing, that,
Right.
wow, that's an outstanding peak.
Mm.
It gives me confirmation that my idea was correct.
And for
Oh,
our
yeah.
listeners, there's a page on this site called the Major Peaks Map, and you really should go to it and look at it. What we're looking at here, you've got the peaks, and so when you hover over one of these areas, what I'm seeing, are these the waypoints, or are if you hover it, the little lines and the dots, are those hiking paths that you've taken between the two, or are those how are they connected, I guess?
Okay, so that goes back to my childhood days when I was really interested in astronomy.
Oh,
And if you've seen books on astronomy where you
Yeah.
get the constellations and the major stars, and the constellations are always grouped into stars with lines connecting them.
yeah.
So that was kind of the vision here, that I kind of realized that when you plot these major peaks on a map, they fall into these groups like a constellation.
Constellation of
Different
peaks.
shapes and sizes. And I just thought that was really neat how
That's
worked
great.
out.
Oh,
That's fantastic.
So I kind of refer to them as major peak constellations. And, you'll say what's in the Thunder 8 is a constellation, or the upper Skagit 5 is a constellation.
Yeah.
oh.
Yeah.
And Rod, I think my favorite part of the site, besides all the data and all the climbing and all that other stuff, is that mountain goodies.
I was going to ask about that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was something Jim just came up with because Jim,
Oh, and the rug. We got to talk about that.
well,
Mhm.
he is constantly tinkering with what would be better in the mountains. What's the perfect tether?
Yeah.
What's the best thing for this or that? Or, I mean, I think my favorite is he's got these ski things that he puts what are they? Hair bands that he puts around his wrist so that he can wipe his nose on his gloves.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
And so all these are different. He started doing these things called tips because it's just like, you need to share how that works. You need to share how that works.
I love this.
And
yeah.
we've been just shocked at how many of these pages have people just go crazy with them.
It's like
Yeah.
gold.
Yeah, and Jim's had so much fun with it. But go ahead and tell the story with the rugs. Or
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. I was talking about the rugs.
Yeah. So actually, the rug making is under a separate category on the main header. It's, if you go over a little farther, there's reviews, lists, and tips, and then you can go down to the tips page.
Down here,
Anyway.
Trailcat tips.
Yeah, Trailcat tips,
Okay. Let's go to Trailcat tips. There we go.
and then you'll see how to, like, somewhere
Make
down
a
there,
spiral rug.
how to
Is that
make
the
a
one?
spiral rug. Right.
From an old. I love this.
Yeah.
I have three old ropes I can't use anymore. This is good.
Exactly. Every
man.
climber has
Good
old
for the
ropes.
environment.
Yeah, it's I had some ropes that I hadn't been using, and what do you do with these things? Nobody wants to climb on them anymore, but I didn't want to throw them away, and I'd heard about people making rugs of various types. There's different ways you can do it, and I tried it. I tried one method that I thought worked pretty well, and I made a nice big circular rug, and then I made an oval rug with a different rope, and after I'd made a couple of these, I put together this instructional page, and this is the most viewed page on my entire website.
Wow. Oh, that's great. I'm
I've-
not surprised. That's fantastic.
I've gotten I don't know,
Look at
I'm
those.
probably up to 10,000 views
Wow.
on this particular page, and obviously there's a lot of people with old ropes who don't know what to do with them, and I just think this is the highest and greatest use for an old rope.
These are amazing.
It's
These are
turning
amazing
something
designs. This is
function.
beautiful. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. A lot of these ropes are just so colorful, and they're still, as a rug, they'll last forever.
Yeah.
Mhm.
They're super durable, and now you're keeping an old rope out of the landfill
Yeah.
Yes.
by
For
doing
sure.
this.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
getting it out of my basement.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes, integration.
That's fantastic. I love this.
Yeah. So now, when I see a rope or buy a new rope, I not only think, well, what would this be like to climb with? I think, what will this look like as a rug?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, it's funny. I bought a new rope last year, and it's the most colorful rope I've owned. I didn't do that on purpose. It was just, it's exactly what I needed. And so the color, I was like, I'm like a subdued, but now I can't, well, I don't want to say I can't wait to wear it out, but I can't wait to wear it out so I can actually make it into a rug. This is cool. Yeah.
What we thought was neat was we had a friend of ours that got rid of a bunch of rugs, and so we kind of had this
Bunch of ropes.
bunch of ropes.
Yeah.
Excuse me. We had somebody contact us and say that for outdoor fundraising, how people go to auctions and stuff like that, and it might be for anything. He donates climbing rugs. So
Aw.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
old rope so that he could create these rugs to go to charity.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. It's anybody who can, it takes a little time to put one of these together, but,
Sure.
the results are so cool. When we were over at Kerry and Mike's house last year, I remember Mike came out of the basement with this climbing rope that he wasn't sure if,
Yes.
using anymore. I think it was okay to climb with, but my eyes popped out when I saw the color, and I thought, this will make a gorgeous rope.
Yeah.
I mean, it had purples and teals in it.
Yes.
And I said, oh, this is going to be a nice rug.
Yeah.
Yes. We got that when we were first dating. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So it's been around.
So it's got sentimental value.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'd recommend washing the ropes first, right? Is that the,
Yeah.
definitely.
We have learned the lesson about not washing them. Jim was doing a training session for the American Alpine Club, and they brought their rug, but they didn't wash one of them.
Yeah.
Boy, are they hard to work with.
I bet. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're stiff and
You get so much sand and grit in the
Yeah.
weave.
That's a well-loved rope, I'd say. you
yeah.
know.
And you
Yeah.
can't ever wash it once it's.
Once it's a rug.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really easy to throw them you just throw them in the washing machine and,
Yeah. It couldn't be easier to wash a rug.
Yeah.
Rope. Yeah.
and then you just throw it out and it dries by itself.
Well, while we still have time, maybe we could jump over to your site for a few minutes, Eileen. Is that okay?
Yeah.
I'm going to stop sharing, and then I'm going to do it again here.
The thing that always surprises me about my site is there'll be different ones that I write up that actually does better than Jim's, and I have never figured that out. I'm an
Interesting.
SEO person, and I would think, oh, this is gonna. No,
Just how Google operates.
It's- yeah.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. Sure.
but you see, mine is very simple. Mine,
Yeah.
and my reports are written for fun. So I always tell people, if you want to know how to do the Wind Rivers High Traverse, go to Jim's site. If you want to
Right.
be
Well-
entertained, come to my site. Because that's really the difference. I mean, mine are sort of my emotional, step-by-step, what happened, the fun parts about it. But I would never use my site to navigate anything. But like if you click on any one of them, you'll see that my site's very simple because it's all been based on learning how to do things before we did them on Jim's site. So when things happen, when upgrades happen, things like
All right. We're back with Jim and Eileen Brisbine, and we're just, we had a little technical difficulty there, so we're back. I'm going to pull up and share Eileen's site now so that we can continue talking about that a little bit, exploring that a little bit. And I think and something I didn't think about till you said it, Eileen, is that you each have your own sites. You write about the same trips, but you each write it yourself in your own way, in your own form. So I thought that's really cool. So maybe you could kind of go back and just tell us a little bit about, how you write and.
Sure. Mine is more written. Jim's is more written on an information, like if somebody wants to do that climb.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of that kind of information. Mine is more like telling a story. So I always say mine is about the fun, the
Entertainment.
entertainment value. That's what my site is.
Love
But the other thing I do on my site is Jim doesn't write up everything we do because Jim doesn't he writes up actual climbing, the day, like when Jim wrote up the Wind Rivers, that's a perfect example. When Jim wrote up the Wind Rivers High Traverse, he didn't deal with the fact that we stopped and biked the Hiawatha Trail.
Oh, yeah.
So for my site is about what are we doing? Mine is for the family or anybody else that's kind of interested in, what exactly did we do? And
Sure.
so I write about those types of things as well. And Jim's is very, very precise on exactly, like his doesn't even start until we leave the parking lot, till
Yeah.
basically get to get to Pinedale and we're starting.
Okay.
So yeah, mine's more about the entertainment of the whole thing. Much more. I would never use mine to try and figure out how to do anything. No way.
Well, and
Except
capturing
the right,
memories.
except the right, the right spots to stop for food, right? I mean,
Yes,
that's
exactly.
important.
Yes, and memories, capturing parts of those memories. They're so
Exactly.
priceless.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Jim and I have, we both intend to have our sites stay up the rest of our lives, just because of the memories. It's so nice to be able to put things up there and hold them. So
Yeah.
mine's kind of a family thing, and Jim's is more of a historical thing on.
I love
on
that.
how to do each climb.
Right. It's a legacy that you're
Yes.
leaving too for
Mhm.
everyone. Really amazing.
Wow. Yeah, gorgeous photos too.
But mine
Yeah.
doesn't have any of the bells and whistles, because if I figured out how to do it on Jim's site, then I didn't do it on my site.
Yeah,
Like sidebars and things like that. No. Once
that's
I
great
figured it
though.
out, I didn't do
Yeah.
it.
It's beautiful
Wow.
and heartfelt.
Yeah. Do you are both of you or one of you a photographer, or do you just use your phone, or what do you use for your photography?
It's kind of an interesting thing. So I use my phone, and Jim uses his phone plus an old camera, a little itty bitty thing. And tell them why, honey.
Yeah, I just use a little point and shoot digital camera.
Yeah.
For a couple of reasons. One is that, in climbing situations, there's a lot of times when you have one hand on the rock or one hand on an ice axe and you can't let go.
Yeah.
And with a point and shoot camera, I can pull it out of my pocket with one hand and get a picture
Yeah.
of a climbing situation. And if I was trying to use a bigger camera or my phone, I would
Yeah.
just miss the photo entirely.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
the quality is not as good, but I get more opportunities to take pictures. And then secondly, every once in a while I'll drop my camera. Your hands are cold, or you're hanging on a rope with one hand, and if I drop my iPhone, it would cost I don't know what, $1,500 to replace.
Yeah.
If I drop my point and shoot camera, I can find another one on eBay for $50.
Right.
So there's just a practicality there too.
We had way back when. Have you been up Mount Athabasca in Canada?
No, I
Oh.
know of it, but I haven't climbed
We
it.
use that as a graduation climb for mountain school. A lot of times, and we had one of the students. I think it was there. I forget if it was there or somewhere else, but it was one of those, and had their phone out, and whoop, there it went, and it just kept going.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Oh,
that's how it is.
oh, wow. What would you guys say that would, help inspire someone if they wanted to go in the outdoors? Do you have any advice?
What I think's interesting is, like our daughter, of course, Jim took her places, but she just wasn't a big outdoors person at all. That just wasn't for her. And then the second she discovered it, she was in Argentina and backpacked in Patagonia, and she was just addicted, and she's been addicted ever since. I mean, she's just been climbing all sorts of stuff. But what she's realized and what she started doing, because now she supports groups and she does beginner groups, and she's been approached by many guide groups to have her assistant guide. And the people that she partnered with because she wanted it to be basically an introduction.
Oh,
Because what she realized is that she had always been out in the mountains. Jim had taken her into a tent, and she'd had freeze-dried food and this sort of stuff. And in her Instagram and in her blog, she got a lot of people that were asking her, how do you start?
yeah.
And that's the same thing. We have several people that don't approach us, but we know that have been approached by other people for how do you start?
Mhm.
And I think that's the biggest thing, is people are most nervous about the fact that I don't know how to do this. so I can't do this.
Yeah.
And I think what we're finding is that there's so much more in Instagram, in these different groups. Now you got to watch it. We found out a lot about meetup groups, and some of them are just not the best.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of situations where people just have to go out with somebody that knows something. And there's a lot of people out there that are willing to take people out.
Yeah.
And so it's not about the fact that, oh my God, this looks too hard, or I don't know what to do. It's just about the fact that they don't know what to do.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had several people ask us, how do we go to the bathroom outside? And that would stop people from going out of fear of what the hell do I do?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Valid question.
So I think we would encourage somebody who's interested in starting, we'd encourage them to find some sort of a group or club. There's a lot of them out there.
For sure.
You might join a club and give it a try. And if it doesn't feel like a good fit for you, try a different club or try a different meetup group or Facebook group or something. But, you just gotta find some people with experience to kind of help you along in the early years, and then you can take off.
But the big, go ahead.
No, please.
I was just going to say the big thing is not to, you don't join one group and think that's it. I know people that have been in the mountain, that tried the Mountaineers, for example, and they got in the wrong group and they got left at different climbs. And it's like, that's not what everybody's about.
Right.
And then I know people that have got with a group where they've done 4 miles, set up camp, and then they were done for a week. And they're like, well, that wasn't for me. And it's not that the sport isn't for you or backpacking isn't for you. There's just so much. There's all different types. We know people that are lake baggers. We know people that just want to go set up a base camp and camp outside. We know people that we met people just this last year at Rainier that they're getting back into it, but they're just going 2 miles in.
Yeah, sure.
Because that's all they can carry their packs. So they go 2 miles in, they set up camp, and then they do all these day hikes.
Yeah.
So there's just, it's so much bigger than just climbing, or so much bigger than camping. So if you want to try it, you just got to start trying a bunch of different stuff.
Yeah, I really like that. It's just finding what works for people, which can be so varied and unique and different. And along those lines, I mean, can you guys speak to a little bit about the outdoors or getting outside or how it impacts you or your well-being?
Well, Kerry, I'm going to go back to something you just said.
Sure.
It just dawned on me where we're comparing this sort of stuff, that you've talked a lot about relationships, and that's what we've been talking about with this a lot, is this with relationships. And that's what you have to think about it as, any of it, right?
Right.
And it's like dating. If you think you want to start hiking, you got to go find the right people to hike with. It's just like dating. There's so many different people out there. And just because you get with the wrong people, or you get in a situation where you're like, I'm not having any fun, then stop dating them, break up, find somebody else.
That's good. I like that.
Okay, so go back to your question.
I like that. That's so
great.
great. That's such a good point, though, because it might be different with a different relationship. Or a different, connection. It could be a whole different experience.
Yeah, because we've all tried to, during dating, stick with something longer than we should have. And you don't have to stay in it. You can find something that fits.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, because different groups or different people, I think that's such an important point what you're bringing up. Because people can have these really amazing experiences and they can all look different.
Yeah, that's
exactly.
Yeah.
Which creates the love for the outdoors. So when so a couple things with that. So does it feel like it increases your well-being, and how do you help inspire others to love the outdoors?
I think in terms of well-being, I mean, we get a lot out of going out in the mountains, going outside. I think a few years ago in the heat of COVID, Eileen and I saw how critical it was that we were able to get outside. We're fortunate enough that we live near a trail network here. on the east side of the lake. And, when it started out as a lockdown, okay, you can't drive. We weren't supposed to drive anywhere. But, it's okay. Go for a walk. We were encouraged. Well, okay. So we did a 4-mile hike from our front door. And then we did a 6-mile hike. And then we got a map that showed all the trails nearby. And I think we got up to 16 miles.
Wow.
That we could hike and not repeat the same trails.
Wow.
We were really fortunate that we live close to a trail network. But I think about how that got us through COVID. I mean, we were more active than ever during COVID.
Right.
I just felt so bad for those people who had to stay home because they didn't have outdoor activities. And I don't know, I felt like we came out of COVID in a better mental state than when we started. I really
Wow.
For I think
Wow.
both of us, and maybe I'm wrong, but when we're outside, it's a calm. Outside is calm. Even if you're, you got to get away from the street, but even if you're near the street, you still can get in your own head, and it's very calming. Even if we're in any other situation, you can still, even if you're climbing, because you're breathing and you're in your own head, because you're not always having a conversation, it's very quiet. It's very calming. But the other thing is that it's, you got to be present. So when you go outside, it's a very present situation. And I mean, Jim and I, that's when we do most of the talking about our relationship, is when we're outside. And I think it's got to do with, personally, the fact that you don't have to look at each other. You're just hiking down a trail talking. Yeah. But there's nothing else to do. You're in a present situation. You have to be present to the moment. And
yeah, I would say there's two things going on. One is there's no distractions. And the other thing is it feels when you're out, on a trail or in camp or on a mountain, it feels like you're in a no judgment zone. So you have the freedom to say what you really think without getting judged or criticized or whatever, So yeah, we found that to be a healthy environment to maybe work out some of our issues or bring up a sensitive topic.
Especially if we're bringing up a sensitive topic, we both found that, and I don't know if it's because, I think it's because when you're walking down a trail, you are each in your own space, even if you don't think you're in your own space, because you can't see each other. You're looking at your own thing. You really are in your own present little bubble, right? And I think there's something to that, because there'll be times that, especially because I talk without thinking and Jim's a thinker before he talks. So when we're on a trail, I might bring something up and then I know it's going to be quiet for a little bit and I just go about my little thing and then he'll all of a sudden start talking. So it's like you can be in your own bubble. There's something to that. You could be walking with people down, anywhere, hiking, and it's very easy to be present in your own bubble and be in your own head. You can't be on your phone and walking.
Right.
Your phone doesn't work in camp. It's no one's looking at who's got makeup on. And I mean, it's just like Jim said, it's a total no judgment zone. For everybody, anybody that's on the trip.
I've always said that my absolute favorite moments in my life, the most cathartic moments, are right after an alpine start. You're roped up, you're on a glacier, you're climbing, and there's no talking, you're just walking, and you hear the sound of the equipment and your footsteps, and the air is so still, and I don't know, to me, that's probably one of the most wonderful moments in my life is that time. So, I work out a lot of things when I'm in those moments,
When you're on a rope team and you are, 20 feet from the next person, it is very quiet.
Yeah.
And I think the more people that are alpine people, they do love the sound of the snow. Like when you're crunching in the snow.
Right.
It's the crunch, crunch, crunch is it's a very
It's hypnotic and magic.
Yes,
Yeah.
hypnotic.
Yeah.
That's right. It's that makes so much sense. Jim, I heard you talk about, like, I can't quote you exactly, but the more people get outdoors, the more they love the outdoors, the more they'll protect it. I think you've said something along those lines. I hope I'm accurate. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think we had that discussion on the trail.
Yes. That's one of my favorite. That
Okay.
really impacted me.
I've always believed that, that there's some, environmental groups who think that humans should not be allowed into, this area of the mountains or this desert landscape or whatever it is. And I've always had the thought that if you can limit people. You don't want an area to get overrun. Talking about the enchantments, for instance,
Sure.
have to limit people because it'll just get overrun. But if you keep everybody out, nobody will know about it and nobody will care to protect it.
Yeah.
And the more people who know about it, when people know about a beautiful area, they get very protective of it. And so I think it's important that there's always access to places like that. Maybe limited access, but, people have to be aware of it, that it's a special place that needs to be protected.
Yeah. I love that so much. It's really beautiful. Eileen, anything you want to say about that? Or
I was just going to say the same thing about like the wildlife, and wildlife needs to be kept wild. And you'll see people, feed an animal on the side of the road or whatever. But it's along those same lines. There's nothing more empowering than when you see a bear in the wild.
Yeah.
yeah.
And you get to sit back and watch it.
Or more emotional is a mama bear and a baby bear, or a mama cougar and a baby cougar.
Wow.
It's just, and you just think, oh, we have to protect these species. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. People talk about, fearing seeing a bear or cougar in the wild. I just, and I've seen both in the wild. I just say you should be so lucky to see a bear or cougar in the wild.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
I am still waiting to see my first cougar in the mountains.
Oh.
Rod, you're very lucky if you've seen one.
We've seen them walking near near parking lots and stuff like that, but this just doesn't count.
Not really.
Yeah.
Wild.
When you see, we've seen a mama bear bathe a baby bear in a little tarn. Those are just,
Like moments of awe.
Yeah.
Like really being in awe.
And it's fun. I remember at one point being up on up at Cascade Pass, and there was a whole group of people all with their distance, but this bear's down there eating berries, and it was so quiet and so calm, and probably 20 people standing back from the bear. And the bear was in the trail down there, and they all wanted to go on the trail, but no one's going on the trail. And it's just this whole different world of respect and awe and quiet and absorbing that feel for that animal.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
And they just, everybody just kind of intuitively understood that bear lives here. We don't. The bear does. We're visitors here, and that's a powerful moment.
Okay, in our few remaining minutes, let me ask, what is your absolute favorite trip?
Holy crap!
Or top three. Let's do that.
I will have
most epic.
To say, I think my favorite trip is still going to be Crooked Thumb and Phantom. The one that it was my fourth attempt and Jim's third attempt, and we were with another friend of ours, and it was her fifth attempt.
Wow!
And where we camped, we ended up on the ridge. It was just a whole magical trip where every time we look back on it, we climbed this thing called Phantom, and it's back tucked way back into the pickets.
Oh, wow.
But she needed to climb it. She was finishing the top 200 and she needed to climb it. And so as tired as we were, we just got up in the morning and went out there, and oh, what a phenomenal climb. And there were how many parties in the climb book? 10?
Yeah.
So,
Wow. Going back to 1930 something.
yeah, going back to Becky.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Was Becky the first ascent on that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was-
So only
Wow.
10 parties since then.
Wow.
What?
yeah, that's
Yeah.
Are you serious?
That checks the epic box, doesn't
Yeah.
it? Yeah. Wow.
10?
And it
Yeah.
it was a magical, fun climb. I mean, if that peak was accessible, it would be like, it would have 100 people a month.
yeah.
Yeah.
It was just such
Wow.
a phenomenal, fun climb. Not dangerous, not scary, fun rope, peaks. It was just fabulous. What are you going to say?
Wow.
You'd have to give me a couple of weeks to come up with an all-time favorite, Rod.
Too many?
I could give you a handful because, I grew up in Washington and spent most of my life in the Cascades.
Yeah.
There's a special feeling about doing an alpine traverse. I think that's kind of the epitome for me, is an alpine traverse from point A to point B through rugged terrain, and you can't control a lot of the things in between.
Boy, that's so true. Yeah.
And the Picket Traverse is a classic,
Picket Traverse,
legendary.
very high.
It's like a 9-10 day traverse.
Wow.
Very rugged and strenuous. That's up there. The Ptarmigan Traverse is, that's a classic. It gets a lot of grips. And then Eileen and I did a traverse through the Alpine Lakes Wilderness, climbing some peaks along the way. That was just really neat because that's close to home. But we'd never just pieced together, a point A to point B over 6 days, like that. Again, the things we have in our backyard here in Washington.
Yeah.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah.
I mean, we're so blessed, and I never take that for granted.
Well, and I think Jim hit on something that if you can isolate either of us, it's always going to be something where it was an adventure, where it was the unknown, whether we had to piece it together. When we did the Alpine Lakes Wilderness, we didn't know where we were going. You have it on a map and you're making decisions every point of the day.
Yeah.
I mean, at one point we made a decision where it was like, okay, we take a boulder field or we take a bushwhack.
Right.
And we're both like, oh, how bad and we heard the bushwhack was horrible. But we're like, how bad can it be? And we're in the bushwhack cussing and swearing and, I want to go down by the lake. And so down we'd go. And, at one point, Jim's like, I'm done. We're going to swim. And I'm like, oh, God, that ain't going to work. So it was just, it's all that having to puzzle through it and having to be present at the moment, and just dealing with it. We're offline again.
We lost Jim and Eileen at the very end there, but folks, we are so happy you joined this podcast to listen in or watch. We encourage you, Kerry and I encourage you to go to their Jim and Eileen Brisbine's websites at trailcatgym.com, and then Eileen's adventures. It's eileensadventures.com. Great trip reports, phenomenal information. Kerry, I don't know what you think. I mean, they are such an inspiring couple.
Yes, legendary.
Their life together, their stories, their attitude, but the points that they've been teaching today, just so amazing.
Yeah. Truly like a peak performing couple. They are epitome of that. I mean, they embody that. They work so well together. Their love for each other is very evident. They are such a strong team. It's such a joy to know them.
Boy, what a great one. Yeah, what a great one. Well, we'll certainly have them back on. We can't wait to talk to them again. And Folks, we appreciate you listening in to the Limitless Podcast. We hope you come back and listen to more. Kerry, it's been so great again. Just doing another podcast with you. Can't wait to do more. So
yes, likewise, Rod.
all right.
Same.